Recap: Alchemy Emperor of the Divine Dao, Chapter 839, Chapter Henyi Translations. Editor, Henyi Translations. To share tea with a ghost, what kind of nerve would that take? And even more frightening, did you truly understand what you were about to swallow? It was tea meant for something that had already stepped beyond the living world, and yet you still dared to drink it. Were you not afraid that the moment it touched your throat, you too would be dragged into that same cold fate? The others traded glances in silence. In their hearts, they all came to the same conclusion. If Ling Han insisted on acting like a fool, then let him, better him than them. Besides, this was also a chance to watch closely and measure the danger. Earlier, the dead souls of those fallen female soldiers had gathered in such numbers that they could even menace heaven-tier cultivators. If that was already so terrifying, then what of this female general before them? Was she even more dreadful than that sea of resentful spirits? Could she truly injure even shattering void-tier cultivators? In the face of the unknown, not a single person dared to wander carelessly. After all, the master of this divine ship might possess strength that defied common sense. The female general laughed, her tone casual, as if she were speaking of dust on her sleeve. Ha 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 ha! In my eyes, what difference is there between all of you? You are merely a little stronger than ants. Then, as though it were the most natural thing in the world, she gave a simple command. Sit. The moment those words fell, Zuo Qifang and the other four Immortal Realm prodigies all darkened with anger. They were not ordinary cultivators from some backwater. They had come from the Immortal Realm itself. For her to speak so condescendingly as if they were nothing, was it truly appropriate? Ling Han, however, dropped down without hesitation, wearing a smile. Yet the truth was not courage alone. He had done it because Small Tower had urged him on. Otherwise, the very idea of drinking tea with a ghost was enough to send a chill crawling through his bones. That stubborn Sundari Tower had said many times that it wanted to change owners, but Ling Han knew those were only harsh words. Up to now, it had always helped him, so he believed this time would be no different. The female general lifted the teapot and poured for Ling Han. A clear stream flowed from the spout, and he could even see that it rose with heat still steaming. When the cup reached about half full, she calmly set the teapot down. That sight alone left everyone's minds reeling. They had emerged from the void. Everyone aboard had already died. And yet, here was hot tea being poured as though the world's rules had never been broken. It was too strange, too unnatural. What kind of tea was this? Really? All eyes locked onto the cup before Ling Han, and then, without anyone even touching it, a muffled sound escaped from throats around him, one after another, as if their spirits had been struck. I saw the gleam and flash of cold steel, slaughter everywhere. I saw a sudden glimpse of what has not yet come. I saw a sinister realm filled with ghosts. Each person witnessed a different vision upon looking toward that tea, yet every vision shared the same thing: terror. Cold sweat beaded across their bodies as if they had just suffered a serious illness. Even setting aside ordinary shattering void-tier cultivators, even the era's strongest, Ma Duo Bao, Wu Gao Yuan, could not stop themselves from shuddering, and the two 18-eyed corpse kings fared even worse. Pa! 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 7 of their eyes burst one after another, and their aura dropped sharply in an instant. It was obvious their battle prowess had fallen drastically. How horrifying was this? It was only a cup of tea, and they had merely looked at it, yet such an astonishing outcome had already occurred. If a glance alone could do this, then what would happen if someone actually drank it? Woo! Woo! The two great corpse kings let out miserable cries, retreating despite themselves. Their whole bodies trembled. Their skeletal frames swayed as though they might collapse at any moment. Too frightening. The crowd shook their heads. Even if a blade were pressed to their necks, none of them would dare to drink that tea. If they drank it, they were certain they would die. Ling Han, Ma Duobao called out, unable to bear it. He did not want Ling Han taking such a risk. Ling Han's future was too bright, too full of possibility. If Ma Duobao failed to split open the skies, he could still place hope in Ling Han. But the 8 kings could not. For them, it was absolutely impossible. Ling Han hesitated as well, even within his own heart. This cup of tea was far too terrifying. So terrifying it was almost enough to scare someone to death. Yet the female general did not urge him. She only watched him with a smile, patient, as if time itself were hers to command. Ling Han weighed the matter briefly, then finally extended his hand. He spoke with respect, his words careful and sincere. Senior, this tea you offer is truly shocking and it makes me uneasy. But it is a gesture of goodwill from Senior and I have already accepted it. Naturally, there is no reason for me to retreat halfway. He lifted the cup and took only a small sip. Bitter. So bitter it was beyond reason. Ling Han's expression instantly turned vivid with shock and strain. The bitterness was so overwhelming it felt capable of killing. He forced himself not to spit it out. Yet in the next breath, with a pa sound, his eyeballs actually popped out of their sockets. They had popped out from the extreme bitterness alone. Everyone was stunned. When it came to physical toughness among those present, only Ma Duobao could be said to match Ling Han, and if even Ling Han suffered like this, then it meant the same fate would befall anyone else who drank that tea. In their hearts, everyone thought the same thing. Thank goodness I wasn't the one foolish enough to poke my head out. Pa! Ling Han's ears fell off as well, then his nose followed. Ta, 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 ta! An entire mouthful of teeth dropped out completely. His hair fell away in an instant, leaving him bald. And it still did not end there. His scalp split, revealing a skull that gleamed with golden light. Yet even those bones, as strong as level 10 precious metal, began to show countless cracks spreading like spider webs. Too terrifying. Such strong bones, yet they were shattered by nothing more than the bitterness of a sip of tea. Too bad, the Ninth Underworld King muttered, unable to hide his regret. Someone with a physique so powerful, if refined into a corpse soldier, could have become a terrifying existence, perhaps even a super corpse king. Yet now that physique was destroying itself. That's good. We have one less future trouble, someone else said with a smirk. Ling Han's body was too tough, even descended. Immortals might not be able to kill him. If he died here and now, it could be considered a blessing to his enemies. This tea, it was truly like the most poisonous substance in all history. Even a physique comparable to level 10 precious metal was not qualified to withstand the venom within it. Hu Niu had already begun hopping up and down in anxious agitation. Yet strangely, she did not rush forward. It was as if she had sensed something and held herself back. Ma Duobao and the 8 kings tried to step in at once, but the female general merely cast them a look. In that instant, an aura of unspeakable dread spread outward like a storm. Pa! 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 Ma Duobao and the 8 kings suddenly flopped to the ground. They couldn't even catch their breath. How could they possibly remain standing? It was too shocking. This was definitely immortal-grade battle prowess, yet why had it not triggered the suppression of the Eye of Dao? Perhaps, an old antique guessed quietly, because it is only aura. No actual power is circulating. But even if they understood it was only intimidation, so what? Just as a decree at the spiritual infant tier could force spiritual tier cultivators to kneel, the same principle applied here. This female general was too powerful. So powerful she had exceeded what could be called an elite in any ordinary sense. Wu Gaoyuan and the other immortal realm prodigies all made their own secret deductions. Could she be a heavenly body tier expert? Or even an eternal river tier existence? The 5 great sects possessed mountain, river, and sun moon tier elites, yes, but those were definitely not as powerful as this. Meanwhile, Ling Han's bones finally shattered completely. His whole body collapsed into a horrifying mess of blood and flesh, as if he had been dissolved. A mere sip had been enough to melt him apart. The crowd stood frozen, stunned, yet also secretly relieved it had not been them. Ling Han was dead. A monster like him had actually died like this. So plainly, so abruptly. It felt almost too ordinary. Hu Niu, however, calmed down instead. She stared at the shattered remains, and a flicker of excitement danced in her eyes. The female general's reaction was much the same. She looked toward the place Ling Han had been sitting, then nodded as if satisfied. Quite fortunate indeed, she said, to actually be able to withstand this reincarnation tea. The moment she spoke, Ling Han's broken bones began to release golden light. Countless shattered fragments moved, pieces drawing together, rejoining, until in a short time a human-shaped skeleton was reconstructed before everyone's eyes. What? This brat wasn't dead? Everyone was dumbstruck. His bones had been completely shattered. How was it fair that he still hadn't died from that? The female general spoke again, calm and absolute, as though reciting a truth of heaven and earth. Reincarnation from life to death. Surpass this life. Ling Han's reconstruction accelerated. His skeleton was already formed. Blood and flesh began to grow anew. He was reforming himself right there, returning from death. Living from death, he will definitely be stronger than before. We cannot allow him to live. An antique from the five sects snarled. He reignited his vigor, and his battle prowess surged until it instantly reached 14 stars. Then he struck out with a direct palm, aiming straight for Ling Han's head. This was the crucial moment of reconstruction, the weakest point of the body's rebirth. One blow would be enough to kill him, but Maduo Bao and the 8 kings were all pinned down, paralyzed by that terrifying aura, unable to move, unable to rescue him at all. This chapter reaches you through the hands of Henyi Translations, the translator and editor who carried these words across the river of tongues. Seeking death. The female general let out a cold, effortless humph, as if even her contempt had weight. She did not raise a hand. She did not form a seal. She did not so much as bend a finger. She only turned her gaze, sharp as a drawn blade, upon that old antique who had dared to stand before her. Pooh! The old antique's body jerked as if struck by an invisible thunderbolt. A mouthful of blood burst from his lips, and he crumpled to the ground like a puppet with its strings cut, instantly losing all signs of life. One look, and a shattering void tier elite with 14 stars of battle prowess was erased as easily as dust brushed from a sleeve. What kind of power was this? Where was the Eye of Dao? Come out quickly and suppress her. The shock rippled through the crowd like a gale through dry reeds, yet the female general stood as still as a statue carved from moonlight, her presence pressing down on all souls. Voices, stunned, trembling, spilled out among the ultimate elites who could see through the surface into the marrow of technique. Battle prowess of 20 stars of shattering void tier. It's not a physical attack, but a direct strike to the divine sense. Ma Duobao, Zuo Qifang, and the other highest-standing experts exchanged tight glances. They could tell this female general had not used any immortal-level skill. Because of that, the natural Dao would not rise to suppress her. This was not the kind of borrowed, heaven-defying technique that the world's laws would automatically crush. And more terrifying still, this was an assault upon the spirit. If one could block an attack on the spiritual level, then it would be blocked. If one could not, then a single blow would be enough. Thus, there were only two outcomes. Either it was an instant kill, or the opponent could not be killed no matter what. There was no third possibility. So many people stood here, shoulder to shoulder in this strange place, yet whose spirit was strong enough to withstand a strike that carried the weight of 20 stars of shattering void tier? No one. There was definitely not a single person. Silence spread, thick, suffocating, absolute. No one dared to breathe too loudly, much less speak of resistance. If this female general wanted to kill them, most likely everyone here would be eliminated before a single blade could leave its scabbard. Even someone as strong as Maduo Bao would have to die grudgingly. His physical body was said to possess defenses as strong as level 10 precious metal, yet could steel and bone withstand a spiritual annihilation of this terrifying degree. If even he was unable to, then who else would dare to make a move? And in that heavy stillness, beneath that pressure that made hearts feel like they were being crushed in a giant palm, golden light suddenly wove itself across Ling Han's body. Threads of radiance interlocking like divine armor being forged in real time. His aura surged, not slowly, not step by step. It spiked madly like a dragon waking beneath the earth. 7th layer of the deity transformation tier, then the 8th, then the 9th. In what felt like the blink of an eye, he had reached the peak of the deity transformation tier, standing at the very threshold where one possessed the qualifications to break through to the heaven tier. Yet, aside from Ling Han himself, no one knew what he had just endured. This was not merely cultivation rising. This was destruction and reconstruction. This was a circle of reincarnation. Under the effects of that bitter tea, Ling Han's soul was thrown backward into the wheel of fate. He returned to his last life and lived it again, an entire lifetime from beginning to end, as completely as breathing. But in that last life, he had not encountered the Black Tower. He lived on in this realm until he was 400 or so years old. In that span of years, he even married the heavenly phoenix divine maiden, fate tying their lives together with a knot that felt eternal. Then the immortal realm invaded, and Ling Han, burning with resolve, swore on his life to resist. He did enter the shattering void tier in that life, but his battle prowess was far below the strength he carried in this present life. He fought with everything he had, yet in the end he still died, with a grudge lodged deep in his heart, like a splinter that could not be pulled free. After his death, the heavenly phoenix divine maiden committed suicide, and his 4 disciples, they did not scatter. They fought to their deaths alongside him, strong and vigorous, yet also incredibly miserable. A heroic blaze that still ended in ashes. Then, only after that full passage of existence, Ling Han awakened from his reincarnation dream. To everyone watching from the outside, it had been only a short while, a brief pause in the breath of time. But for Ling Han, he had experienced 400 years again. 400 years of joys and vows, wars and sorrow, love and loss. It left him like a chrysalis that had split open, letting the butterfly emerge, completing an astonishing metamorphosis. And yet, strangely, there was not a bit of change in his cultivation at first glance. His realm had not leapt ahead immediately, but his spirit, his mental state, had advanced into the shattering void tier. That was the true transformation, not in the flesh, but in the core that commanded the flesh. Only then did the bitter tea begin to move deeper, improving his physical body and raising his cultivation level. And the reason all of this could happen so quickly, so violently fast, it shocked even those who had seen countless miracles, was because a drop of indestructible true fluid had already taken effect within him. It was like a hidden foundation stone suddenly revealing its power. With that, he quickly completed the rebuilding of his body as if the ruins of a shattered palace had been restored overnight into a stronger fortress. Even the female general had not predicted this. In her judgment, whether Ling Han could survive that reincarnation would only be decided after at least 3 days' time. Yet here he was, standing up from the abyss before the echo had even faded. Ling Han advanced, directly into the heaven tier. It was not reckless luck. It was not a loss of control. His mental state and spirit had already reached the shattering void tier. Thus, it was naturally impossible that he would be unable to control his sharply increased power. And with the bitter tea's effects, he had already refined and perfected his cultivation on the deity transformation tier to the highest possible level. There was absolutely no reason to suppress his cultivation any longer. The natural result was breaking through, of course. For Ling Han, this road was familiar, as if his feet remembered the path even when his mind was still catching up. But it was also the last familiar stretch. After all, in that reincarnation dream, he had only advanced into the shattering void tier on the spiritual and mental level, an inner transformation, not an actual physical breakthrough he had experienced in the waking world. And yet, Hong, his whole body shuddered as the heaven tier opened beneath his feet, like a gate of clouds splitting apart. The others were stunned, senseless. He had broken through? Just like that? They had all seen clearly. Previously, Ling Han was only in the 6th layer of the deity transformation tier, and in a mere instant, he had directly broken through to the heaven tier. This speed, this leap, was too shocking, too unreasonable, too much like a legend stepping out of a storyteller's mouth and into reality. That cup of tea, it was not a poison. It was an ultimate treasure. For a moment, heated gazes flared everywhere, like wolves scenting blood. Except this was not blood, but destiny itself. Yet with that female general still overseeing everything, who would dare step out to snatch it? And then another blow landed on their hopes. The liquid in the teacup was quickly evaporating, vanishing as if time itself was drinking it dry. Very quickly, the bottom of the cup could be seen. The sight made everyone lament quietly. Still, there were also some secretly rejoicing. Since they themselves could not obtain it, they naturally did not want any other person to be able to. Even Ling Han had only drunk a mouthful. At last, Ling Han abruptly opened his eyes. For an instant, bizarre shapes like swirling galaxies filled his gaze. Stars and void, rivers of light and dark. Yet soon they returned to tranquility. At first glance, his eyes looked incredibly ordinary, but upon closer examination, one would discover a gentleness like jade within them and an incomparable depth, as if an endless sea lay behind a calm surface. The tea was gone. He had obviously merely taken a sip. Ling Han, too, was slightly bewildered by the emptiness of the cup. The female general spoke, her tone steady, as if explaining a simple rule that the cosmos had always obeyed. Reincarnation tea. A sip is equivalent to a single reincarnation. With your cultivation level, you can only take one sip. Otherwise, you would be trapped in your reincarnation and eternally unable to break free. At those words, the pity that had flickered inside Ling Han was instantly swept clean, like dust scattered by a sharp wind. He rose his clasped hands respectfully toward her and said, "Many thanks for your help, Senior." The female general's lips curved into a faint smile, almost gentle. "You were the only one that dared to sit down and drink this tea, so this is your fateful opportunity. All right, the reincarnation tea is gone, so I can finally let go." She closed her eyes with that same soft smile, and then her body disappeared, like a mirror shattering into nothingness, fragments dissolving before they could even fall. She had let go of her lingering regret, and so the dead soul naturally dissipated. With her departure, the crushing pressure vanished completely, as if the mountain that had been pressing on everyone's chests was suddenly lifted away. In that instant of freedom, every gaze snapped toward the teapot. Greed surged like a flood. Peng, peng, peng. They all pounced and immediately began fighting over it. Hands grabbing, sleeves tearing, a storm of bodies and breath and cultivation intent clashing in a frenzy. But very soon, reality struck like cold water. The teapot was already empty. Indeed, just like what the female general had said, the tea was gone, so she could finally let go. A wave of secret lament rolled through the crowd. Though there had only been half a cup of reincarnation tea earlier, with their ability, they would only be able to drink a mouthful each. Even so, half a cup would have been enough for 7 or 8 of them to drink. This was divine tea, the sort of treasure that could tilt a lifetime. And now it was dust in the wind. Everyone hung their heads and stamped their feet. Regret burned in their bellies. Just now, if they had been only a bit braver, then wouldn't they have obtained an unprecedented fateful opportunity? And it wasn't only about Ling Han's cultivation level rising, everyone could sense it. There was an obvious difference about him, though they could not clearly pinpoint it. It was as if his whole person had been greatly improved on the life level, as though the very quality of his existence had been refined. Then a voice cracked through the air, trembling with fear and disbelief. "This teapot is still hot!" The others froze. That single sentence was enough to scare them to death. This ship had come out of the empty void. Who knew how many years had passed, and yet the teapot was actually still hot? How strange was that? How deep did this mystery go? In the midst of everyone's shock, a softer voice tugged the moment back toward the living. "Ling Han, you okay now?" Hu Niu asked delicately, her eyes fixed on him with a rare hint of worry beneath her usual boldness. Ling Han nodded. Then he smiled and teased her, voice warm as sunlight breaking through cloud. "I'm fine. Wasn't you worried?" Hu Niu huffed and formed a tiny gap between her hands, as if measuring a grain of rice. "A bit, just a little bit." She tried to sound casual, her gesture insisting she was filled with confidence in Ling Han, though the truth lingered in her eyes. Ling Han laughed heartily. He turned his awareness inward, examining himself, and he couldn't help but grin. He had experienced a very great change. His spirit had become incredibly firm, far exceeding that of any ordinary shattering void tier cultivator. His physical body had already been tough in the first place, like tempered metal, and now that his spirit had also improved, it compensated for his last shortcoming, completing something that had once been imperfect. A realization sparked within him like a sword light flashing in darkness. Sword Heart has actually reached major accomplishment, he said to himself. It was not yet a perfected Sword Heart, but he was but a hair's breadth away. Nearby, Ma Duobao looked at him with a complicated expression, rueful and amazed all at once. "My tanned brother, you are indeed shockingly lucky," he said. There were so many people here, and yet only Ling Han had dared to sit down and drink the tea. This was his fateful opportunity. Who could blame fate when the others had chosen to give it up with their own hesitation? Yet Ling Han knew the truth, hiding beneath that courage. Without the protection of the Black Tower, he truly would not dare be so reckless. That was the real foundation of his confidence. Of course, he had no intention of saying this aloud. With the reincarnation tea finished, there was nothing left to linger for. They gathered themselves and continued their way upward through the ship's layered depths. When they arrived at the fourth level, the rooms here were even bigger than before. But judging by their arrangement, they did not resemble bedrooms. Instead, they felt like conference rooms, places where commanders once gathered, where decisions were spoken that could decide the life or death of armies. And just as before, patrols awaited them. 5-man teams of female soldiers moved through these halls with disciplined steps, cold and precise. The moment they detected the intruders, they launched their attacks in the group's direction, the air tightening again with the promise of imminent battle.